So, Berto, someone wrote in today and said that it's funny the way I always mispronounce your name.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to try to do it. So you tell me.
All right.
Humberto.
That's really good.
How about Beto?
That's not good.
Beto.
That's one version of it. That's my nickname.
Beto.
That's not my familial nickname.
Humberto. There's a roll in there somewhere.
The variants are Humberto.
I can't do that.
I know, right? There's Berto, which is the British, the English version.
Berto.
There is my dad's Berto.
Yeah.
And there is my mom's side of the family, Beto.
Beto.
So there's a kaleidoscope, a rainbow of choices when it comes to naming me. So this is part of the problem. We're in some emergency situation. You're being chased, and you're about to call after me, and you don't know what to say, and so the bad guys get you.
Yeah. So, Berto, do you know what a culture-bound syndrome is? Culture-bound syndrome.
Culture-bound syndrome.
Can you imagine what that would be?
I don't think I've heard that, but I can imagine a few things. So I could imagine that you have been immersed in a culture for too long, and now you have a hard time changing to a different culture.
Oh, interesting. 'Cause you're bound to a culture.
Bound to a culture.
For too long. Okay, interesting. Well, that's what I want to talk about today. I want to do a semi-deep dive on this because famous patron Lyndon wrote in and said, I was fascinated to discover what run amok is not just, I was fascinated to discover that run amok is not just an idiomatic phrase. It is also a psychological phenomenon specific to a particular culture.
Whoa.
Can you explore some of the culturally bound syndromes?
Oh, culturally bound syndromes.
Yeah.
I see.
There are many, many, and they've been studied for a long time.
So this is actually some sort of mental issue, but it's specific to a culture.
Exactly.
Whoa.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. I looked up a lot of the research, and I gave it some thought and blah, blah, blah. So this is going to be a deep dive. What do you say, Berto?
I love it.
Welcome to the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor bound within mainstream American culture.
And my name is Humberto Castañeda, or otherwise known as Humberto Castañeda. And I work at a local circus.
Have you seen, you saw Stranger Things too. Have you finished it?
I did.
And when Dustin is doing the...
Oh, yeah.
Wait, you can do the roll of the R.
I can't do Chewy. By the way, episode 7 was awesome.
No, you hated it, right?
I loved it. It was so... I was ready to hate it, but, I was really refreshed because I hate being in a consistent place and with a consistent tone.
Yeah.
I like when it breaks out.
Yeah. Like episode 1 of Star Wars.
It really was a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Like that could have been...
If I hadn't set you up, do you think you would have liked it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Like I was watching it with a friend and we were watching and we didn't say a word because I didn't want to spoil the fact that this one might be a bad episode.
Yeah.
So we watched in silence, and at the end of the episode, I'm like, so, and he goes like, so. I'm like, what? And like, oh, what were you gonna say? I'm like, well, someone warned me. What did you think of this episode? Oh no, someone warned me of the episode. And we were both like, oh yeah. And then we just, for like half hour, we were just bashing it.
God, it was so bad.
Yeah.
This episode is just for patrons of the podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're not a patron of the podcast yet, this episode will end before all of the deep dive content begins. If my notes are any indication, it's probably about an hour and a half. If you want to hear the full episode, you have to become a patron of the podcast by going to patreon.com. That's patreon.com. Join the 600 or so other patrons by going to patreon.com. When you become a patron, you get access to hundreds of patron-exclusive episodes in which we do deep dives into various topics. And when you become a patron, you don't have to listen to the vast majority of commercials that are on the main feed. And remember that a portion of your monthly pledge goes towards various charities that we support.
Nice.